Hey folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the EmbellishPod. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll try to get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at EmbellishPod or TikTok with the same handle. I have the website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, I have Anna and Wendelin joining me from Lodestar Whiskey, a relatively new brand on the West Coast, doing some really interesting things in blending high rye bourbon and American single malt. And I hope you guys enjoy. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you happen to be joining us for this episode of the podcast. I have Wendelin and Anna joining me from Lodestar. If you could give me, kind of the elevator speech on who you guys are, and we'll dive into a little bit more about your brand.
So great to meet you.
Yeah,
We're so
good
excited to be here.
We're the co-founders of Lodestar Whiskey. We are cousins that used to work together for over a decade in entertainment, in film, and in music. And over that time, mainly in the music world, we developed a love for whiskey and ended up doing a total pivot and following our passion and creating Lodestar Whiskey, which we worked on for about 3 years, and then we launched just over a year ago in 2024.
So your cousins and coworkers and now business partners is in family can kind of grow up in very, very different ways. I have a lot of cousins. I have 2 that I'm really close with, and about 25 more that we are cousins, but we don't spend a bunch of time together. So were you guys really close growing up? Did this kind of closeness generate whenever you started working together? And did any of that kind of prepare you for this entrepreneurial journey that you're on now?
Anna and I come from a really big family, and we all really like each other, luckily. And we grew up together. We grew up around big dinner tables, where our families shared a lot of meals and a lot of good drinks and just like enjoyed hanging out with each other. So we were definitely close, from an early age. And then when I moved out to LA, and Anna was already out here, Anna was starting a business of her own, and she was like, I need some help. And I was like, yeah, I'll dive in. And then, our working relationship became very close that way. And we worked, like Anna already said, worked together for over 10 years. So we developed a second hand with each other and worked out all the kinks early on.
Yeah, and I feel like it set us up to be able to do this together in a really good way, because we have such a strong familiar relationship and friendship, but at the same time we had a lot of experience of working together as well.
So you came from the entertainment industry, artist management sort of thing. Was it one of you or both of you that said, I don't want to do this thing anymore. I want to build something new. I want to own something. Can you walk me through how did we get to this point?
Really, it started with a passion for whiskey as a product that we enjoyed and developed our palates over time. And then we noticed that we as consumers didn't feel super represented in a lot of the whiskeys that were out there and that were marketed to consumers. And so that was something we thought about. And the idea to kind of jump and pursue this really came with a pandemic, honestly, because everything in our working world stopped. And it just, I think, as for so many people, it kind of crystallized and clarified a lot of things for us. And it made clear that we wanted to follow a path that was really authentic to us and follow a passion that we felt really strongly about. So that was really the deciding moment was when everything stopped.
So it's a pandemic pivot, right? Which is relatively common
Correct.
for a whole
Yes.
lot of folks. A lot
Yeah.
of career changes, a lot of times. You had developed a love for whiskey and a palate for whiskey, but what's the thing that sort of happens that triggers and says, we're going to start a whiskey brand? Because it could have been any number of other hobbies or passions that I'm sure that you have. What made this one the thing?
Well, I think like Anna already said, we noticed that when we knew a lot of women who drink whiskey and enjoy whiskey, but we didn't feel like there was a lot of brands out there that were speaking directly to women, but also inclusively to other people. So not, so we felt like that was that there was an image of whiskey out there that didn't align with our experience and kind of our aspirations for the spirit. And we felt really strongly like that was something that we wanted to change. And I guess it was that passion and that drive to come in and change something that kind of pushed us over the edge.
And you're identifying something that is, it's not even a secret at this point. Like, women are vastly and grossly represented within the whiskey space. So you had already kind of developed your palate and a love for it in a place where you weren't already represented. Kind of how did you develop it without seeing people like you? Because it's really easy for somebody like me, because I see a whole lot of people that look an awful lot like me in the space already. Kind of what was that like, developing into your palate, your passion, and then your brand, not seeing people like you around?
It was definitely what really drove the whole thing and the idea, for sure. So initially, when we were traveling a lot for work, and this was in the music space, whiskey was the drink of choice in that space. So we were exposed to it. And I think that's how, we both grew up with dads who were whiskey drinkers and really enjoyed good whiskeys, but it wasn't something that I personally was drawn to in my 20s or whatever. But then working and being exposed to it so much, we just started kind of trying it and being curious about this product that's just so interesting. And I always think of it as something that's kind of alive, because every barrel is different and so many things influence the flavors. So then I guess that curiosity about what we were tasting prompted us to taste different things, and wherever we traveled, kind of trying more obscure whiskeys that you wouldn't be able to get everywhere, and just kind of developing our palate that way. And at the same time, every time we would walk up to a bar and order a whiskey in whatever way that was, be it neat on the rocks or in a cocktail or whatever, it would elicit a reaction. And that reaction was either negative or positive, but it was a reaction. And that's something that really stuck with us. It's like, why is there always a reaction when we as women walk up to a bar and order a whiskey? What is happening? That doesn't happen when you order a tequila drink. That doesn't happen when you order a vodka drink. And so I think that was initially what was really standing out to us, and what started the whole idea of like, hold on a second, what is actually happening here? And why is this happening? And it feels antiquated and outdated. And like Wendelin said, it wasn't really matching the experience we had ourselves and that we knew other people to have with whiskey. So yeah.
And so when we started investigating that and taking a closer look, we were like, you know what? These brands aren't actually talking to people like us. And while there has been a shift in the industry for sure, which we're very excited about, even to this day, when you look at the way that whiskey is marketed, women they're present now, but in a lot of places they're still secondary to men. And for us, anything that we would start, we were like, it has to be authentic to us. So we were like, okay, well, this is very authentic to us, because we are those consumers that don't feel spoken to. So that kind of got our brains working, and then we rolled up our sleeves and started just doing a lot of research, meeting with whoever would meet with us in the industry, having a lot of conversations, and we were really pleasantly surprised. First of all, like coming from entertainment, which is historically a pretty gate kept industry, we were really excited to experience that people were very open, and that people were really excited and ready for more of that shift to happen. And they were like, there's a space, step into it, so we did.
Yeah. And, a lot of major brands have historically felt very, very, very much like their marketing towards women their marketing was built by a bunch of guys that looked an awful lot like an episode of Mad Men, right? The way they're gonna kind of do the marketing, the Mojo Dojo Casa House version of it. And whenever they approached marketing to women, it felt very much like, all right, let's just throw pink on it, right? Like pink is always the answer for this. And you guys have said in the past that you don't want to pink wash anything. You're marketing with intent to not necessarily be overly gendered, but being approachable to where it's not, dark red, maroons, greens, the traditional colors that you see on almost every shelf. How do you build that out, right? Because you're coming from a music space, you're shifting into a physical product space, as well as the whole label design, all of those things. What does the build out of this look like to be able to market it without pink washing it?
Yeah, that was really clear and intentional for us from the get-go, was that the whole idea for Lodestar was about inclusivity, and that means not excluding men either. And we wanted to create something that felt, where people can look at it and understand that that's whiskey. Like, we didn't want it to look so far outside of it that you wouldn't even recognize what it is. But at the same time, create something that feels a little more modern. We as consumers are not super interested in overly gendered branding either. That's where this clear idea of not pink washing anything came into, in combination with the inclusivity part. And then we also feel like, a kind of a newer, somebody who's newer to the category, or a younger generation of consumers are also not interested in these overly gendered products. So it kind of made a lot of sense to us to stick to something that would be appealing to a vast amount of people, rather than kind of pigeonholing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's like for us, authenticity, right? We're two women, representation. It's like showing up, and that you don't have to overtly market towards one specific gender if you're showing up in representing, right? So, and then like Anna already said, for us, the colors felt like they point to the history, to a product, like something familiar, but we have two different colors on our label. One is darker, one is lighter, and that's more contemporary. And yeah, there's a lot of brands already out there. If you're looking for the older stuff, it exists. And
Right.
There's wonderful products, but if you are looking for something that's more contemporary, then we're here.
So in you've mentioned this a couple of times. We're talking about not necessarily being overly gendered, and in the past you've indicated that you think there's some evidence that younger consumers aren't interested in that, kind of overly gendered in one direction or the other. Where have you seen that? Is this like market research? Are you seeing trends within the existing whiskey space? Or is it just kind of a sort of an understood situation?
It's a couple of things. It's anecdotal to a certain degree, because we see that when we are out and meeting consumers. We do a lot of events. That's the feedback we're getting. Everybody comments on our pack that they love how it looks, no matter if those are men or women. But it's also based on market research. There's been studies that that even sales increase when you market with less stereotypically gendered branding.
So
yeah, and consumers care about authenticity. So
Yeah.
and they're pretty good at sniffing it out if it's not.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the ability to detect someone's bullshit is pretty heavy within the market space, right? People are aware of those kinds of things, and you have to have authenticity. You've said it a whole lot. It's a really, really important thing, and specifically for what you guys want to do. You've said in the past that community is one of your North Stars, right? And you can't have community without authenticity or transparency or whatever it takes to kind of build trust with people. What does community building look like for your brand in 25, 26? How do you build your community, removing the authenticity? Because that's the kind of the underlying foundation of it.
I mean, so here in LA, which is where we launched the brand, like Anna already said, we do a lot of events, and we love meeting new people and making friends, and sharing whiskey. Online, our approach is more of like a lifestyle approach to marketing our whiskey. We want to make people feel like our brand is accessible. We love sharing recipes. We love kind of inviting our community and people in to try our whiskey in a way that is maybe different than they had thought about whiskey before. And those are just some of the ways that we show up with our community.
And you said you're building in LA. That's where you're launching. As you've experienced maybe some other locations, does the whiskey consumer in LA differ significantly from say going to some of the other places that you've been for the brand, or in other markets, or are whiskey people largely the same?
I would say that whiskey people, I don't want to say they're largely the same. There's so many different people in that space, but I don't think LA people who are already whiskey drinkers in LA to me aren't like totally different than people who are in other places. But LA is really an agave heavy town. So there's a lot of tequila, mezcal. This is what people are used to, or a lot of people are used to. So it's been a really interesting and fun thing to basically bring people into the whiskey category. So whenever we do these events, and we also, this goes back to kind of building community, but also to inclusivity, we show up in places that are maybe typically or traditionally not thought of as whiskey spaces. This includes, fashion pop-ups or
book
art
clubs.
shows or book clubs or game nights or dating events, things where people here at least would probably more expect to see a wine or a tequila. And we see a lot of people who then their reaction is like, oh, I don't drink whiskey, or I'm not familiar with it, or I don't like whiskey, before they even have tried it. And then to kind of bring them in and just be like, well, just try this, or try just a little bit, or try it in a cocktail. And the reactions being so positive, that's been really, really fun to see, where people who maybe specific to LA are really used to a tequila situation, all of a sudden realizing, oh, I really like this, but I didn't think of myself as somebody who likes whiskey.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, there's not, when people think of or consider themselves tequila drinkers, they're probably drinking a margarita, or they're drinking like a tequila soda. Not that many people hit tequila straight up, but because whiskey has a culture and an image attached to it, people think that that's how you consume whiskey. And so we like to show up with cocktails, for example, that are really refreshing and different. It's not only an old fashioned or a Manhattan. It's something that's lighter and closer to something like a margarita. We're also amazing in a highball. So like with, seltzer water and a lemon twist. And when people try it that way, then they're always really pleasantly surprised.
And I've always sort of thought this, right? You're talking about, most of the folks at an event like you're doing, are probably drinking tequila in a cocktail. But if they're not, if they're drinking tequila neat, they're probably the same kind of nerd that is drinking whiskey neat. That's the same kind of nerd that's going to like a coffee cupping experience where they're smelling like we're all the exact same nerd. We just found our thing, kind of in different locations. But it's giving you the opportunity whenever you kind of go into these markets, you're doing, as much brand education and whiskey education at the same time, right? You're kind of expanding those palettes of different people, which is great. As you kind of expand within the LA market, do you have any indicators that you guys have kind of set that says, hey, at this point, this is when we know we're ready for the next big market. This is how we know we've, and I don't think you can conquer LA, but you've conquered LA enough.
I think it's pretty big. Yes. I mean, we're just kind of now expanding into some markets around LA. We just started in Santa Barbara, Long Beach, Orange County, Palm Springs, like those smaller markets that are surrounding or in SoCal, basically. Another part of the community is obviously also hospitality. The bartenders, the bar directors, the food and beverage directors, all of those people. And that's been really amazing too. And that was always our intention to initially in the first year and a half to build really strong relationships that are authentic and real and that we can then build on. And so there was a lot of learning, and there's still a lot of learning that we're doing, figuring out what accounts really work and where the whiskey really connects. And so with the amount of learning that we have done over the last year and the amount of places that we've gotten in LA and now kind of expanding to these other markets and understanding how the same things kind of work, but in that market, this is slightly different and this is slightly different than LA. So all of that, taking all of that, I think we're getting to the point where we feel ready to expand to San Francisco, for example.
So, and as you kind of expand into these markets, most retailers and bars are experiencing brands that show up that have, 2, 3, maybe 5 SKUs whenever they walk in the door, and having a single SKU as you kind of walk in and approach retailers or, on premise, however you want to kind of phrase it. What's your pitch? Like, how do you break that mentality where they're expecting you to show them 5 or 6 different things and maybe they pick 3 that they want to put on the shelf?
Honestly, we haven't really run into that being an issue. Mm-hmm. We tell them that we're new and that we wanted to keep it really simple and that was intentional, that we come from outside of the industry. And so we felt like starting with 1 SKU was a way that we could get the most comprehensive learnings and build on that. So in that way, I hope we kind of bring those people into the fold. And in a lot of places, I feel like it almost makes it simpler. They're like, oh, great. It's 1 SKU. Okay, cool. We do have aspirations to expand our offering, but for right now, it's been.
Yeah, I think to a lot of people, the story connects and people like the product. That helps a lot. There's some like big corporate accounts that only work with one huge distributor, and they are the ones that need like a huge book, and then they're going to pick their things, and they only want to deal with one account of distributor and whatever. We know what those places are, and we know then that's not who we're going to approach. But there's plenty of other places that work differently. I think there's generally a trend away from that a little bit. People are really enjoying the idea of a smaller brand trying to change some things up. And so we've experienced really positive feedback from on and off premise, honestly.
So you have a single SKU, which you focus on making sure that SKU is really good, and it's a refreshing market approach, because a lot of brands are hopping out there with 4 or 5 different things, and it's really hard to say, okay, which one should I focus on? Like, which one is your best? Which one do you have has all your attention? And if you say you have 5 that have all your attention, that means that they're all getting 20% of your attention, because not everything can get 100%. But you came from a place of enjoying and tasting whiskey to building a brand, which is going to be, some degree of blending barrels, and tasting barrels is a little different than tasting whiskey, like the finished products. Tell me about the process to kind of come to what your final flavor profile is. How did you go from, just being, one of us whiskey nerds that drink different bottles, to saying, okay, now I'm going to take these 3, 4, 5, 10 barrels, and I'm going to make a flavor profile, and then that's exactly it.
Well, I think we were, I wouldn't say that we were whiskey nerds, but we were definitely like whiskey lovers. And I think a little bit of coming at it green helped us in the end. We ended up bucking tradition unknowingly, but that turned out to be great for us. We just followed our palates and followed what we loved. Like Anna already mentioned, we spent a lot of time out in places trying amazing whiskey, and started to just write stuff down. Like, this is what we like. This is what we don't like. This is why we like this whiskey, because of, it's has forward caramel notes, but it's not too sweet. And we like this because it has punchy citrusy notes. But if, this one has maybe a little bit too much rye, that would take, somebody getting used to it. And since we were thinking about who the people would be that we would serve it to, we're like, maybe we need to dial that down. We like this whiskey because it's a lighter whiskey. We like this whiskey because of its coloring. I mean, we literally took a 360 approach, and always had our consumer at the top of our mind. And we came up with this flavor brief. And then when we started to really get serious about creating Lodestar Whiskey, we, after talking to a lot of different people, learned that the best way that we were going to achieve what we were trying to achieve was through blending. And so, we ended up working with a master blender, and developed our recipe. And we're very happy with it. And now when we, whenever we create a new batch, we taste every single barrel. We have great relationships with the distilleries that we source from, and then we taste everything, and then we blend it.
Yeah, and sometimes we send barrels back because they don't fit what we are doing, and we also kind of, after a while, initially we worked with a master blender, and then we kind of caught the blending bug, and realized what a creative process that is. Also are super excited to do a new expression because we want to do it again. Just ended up with tons of samples blending at the kitchen table. And, it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun to work with barrel brokers that send you really, really interesting stuff. And then you get to experiment.
And you said this, and this is kind of maybe a minor portion of what you were talking through, but it's something that kind of caught my ear. Is you said distilleries, plural, right? Because there's a lot of brands that are hopping out there, and they'll source from maybe one distillery, and at least from a consumer's perspective or from a nerd perspective, right? On our end, my end of the spectrum. It gets more difficult to be like, okay, you're buying 100 barrels from the exact same distillery, that's the exact same mash bill. They're going to vary in flavor, but they're going to have maybe some similar notes. Whereas if you're working with multiple distilleries, you're creating something that's genuinely unique, right? Because you're putting together multiple things, which is really refreshing, right? It's great to hear that. How many batches have you done so far? Are you still in your first batch, or have you moved on to a second, a third, a fifth, a 10th?
We're in our third batch
yeah.
right now.
And
And we're
working
planning to
on-
do another
yeah.
one in the fall.
So how do you maintain or prevent for flavor drift, right? Because I've heard a number of different blenders just kind of describe their process to make sure that 1 and 4 taste similar, or are you working in a vintage concept where it's a 1 and 4 are going to taste different and that's okay?
We're definitely going for consistency, especially for this initial expression. Again, the whole idea was that we create a really high quality product that somebody could experience neat and be totally satisfied, but at the same time, create something that's accessible from price point, but also from flavor profile. And so, yes, it's important to us that there's consistency. Again, I think it just takes experience, and we're obviously still learning, but we've gotten enough experience where we can taste barrels and realize like, yeah, this is a little bit too far out, or this is way too far out, or this will fit. And the more experience you gain, obviously, the more it gives you a little bit more confidence. I remember at the very beginning, I was like, how is this ever going to be consistent? I don't understand how it's breaking my brain. How's that supposed to work when every barrel is different? But yes, we figured all that out. And then working with different distilleries, it's also, yes, it can keep it more interesting. It can also mean that we are not tied to one place too much. And at the same time, as Wendelin was saying, we're really excited about doing, we love the idea of doing like smaller limited editions, because we do come across barrels sometimes that are super interesting, or batches of barrels that are super interesting that just don't fit this specific flavor profile. But then to do something that's maybe a little bit higher priced and more limited, but that's really really special is going to be fun to do.
Yeah, and I'm going to dive into, because I've got some questions around that on the special things that you want to do, but I do want to talk about kind of the core product that you have, right? And you mentioned that you have a flavor brief for it, and you mentioned that you kind of you always keep the customer in mind. I guess let's start with kind of what is the product? Where is it priced within the market? Because I know the answer to that question, but I'm going to let you answer it because it's a really competitive price and a really competitive place to be in. So kudos to you for stepping into that realm. But what does the flavor brief look like for that? What does the targeted customer look like for it as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a blend of high rye bourbon and American single malt. And what we wanted to achieve, like I said, was something that was approachable in flavor, but high quality to where it can stand up to somebody who's a seasoned whiskey drinker. And serve strategies were really important to us from the get-go as well, because we don't consume whiskey only in one way. And we know a lot of people who don't. And so we wanted it to be, viscosity was important. We wanted it to be easy to shoot, but also sip on and not water down too quickly if you put a rock in it. So it's like we bottle it 90 proof. But we wanted the flavor notes to also stand out in a cocktail enough. So yeah, there was a lot that kind of went into the flavor. I don't know if you want to explain the actual flavor profile, but yeah.
Yeah. So, the high rye bourbon, or I should say, when you first try it, it definitely drinks more like a bourbon. 70% of our blend is that high rye bourbon. And you get kind of like those familiar caramel notes up front. But the high rye content not only mellows out the sweetness, but also brings in like some really lovely citrus notes. And it's got like that spice backbone that stands up to other ingredients in cocktails. And then the American single malt, this is where, we were like unintentionally bucking tradition. We wanted a whiskey that had a longer finish. We wanted to bring in, there were whiskeys out there that we tried that had more of those like malty notes in them. So we wanted to bring that in. We felt like that kind of finish with those toasty cereal notes just rounded it out, and again kind of mellowed out the sweetness and also kind of the punchiness of the rye. And so like all of those things together, we were really happy with how it ended up in the glass, or the bottle, I should say.
Yeah. So, and you've got a high rye bourbon, and then you've got an American single malt, and you're sourcing these from different locations to build the blends that you have. How did you identify who you wanted to work with? Did you try their representative samples, or did you kind of reach out? Like, how do you go about building this uniquely situated mash bill effectively, or recipe, or whatever you want to call it, which is refreshing to see bucking trends, right? We want to see that for sure.
Yeah,
How did you identify who your partner was going to be?
It was a lot of research and tasting.
Yeah, we traveled to different distilleries, tasting different products, meeting with people, getting samples sent, like just kind of figuring out who has what and how does it taste.
So, where do you sit price point in the market on this, and where can I currently purchase it if I'm not in LA?
Yeah, online our price is $45. If you are in LA or in Southern California, there's a few retailers who sell it for $40. But yeah, $45 is what it is. And then online is, if you're not in LA, you can order it online at lodestarwhiskey.com.
So, and it's an incredibly competitive price to kind of be entering the market with your SKU. A lot of smaller brands will start off with something significantly more expensive. So like I say, kudos to y'all for being there. Now we will go backwards now and talk about, these really interesting barrels, right? The ones that you have, thought of for limited releases. And without kind of giving away any secrets that you might have, what makes one interesting to you? Like, what is it that it's really, really off profile? Is it there's a distinct one note? What are the things that make it unique to you?
I think kind of all of the above. It's having tasted a ton of stuff, it's like, oh, it just stands out when we try it. And sometimes it always also has a story component, where it's like, oh, this was a distiller who was just cleaning out the still and he had some excess grain and wanted to try, whatever, was having fun. And it ended up being this incredible, incredible spirit that they made. And so that's part of it too.
So if I were to look, 5 years in the future, beyond your core lineup, how many of these, if you had your perfect world, how many of these limited releases would you envision happening in the next 5 years?
I think we would love to do one a year. And then eventually probably include one that we feel is very different from our initial SKU, and keep that kind of going. So have some limited ones that we put out once a year and then create a second steady one, basically.
So, and you've talked about, kind of being interesting to new consumers in the space, and, these LEs are really, whiskey nerds love to get to kind of like search these things out, right? And newer consumers can kind of be scared of some of these limited edition situations, right? Because it isn't going to be, a repeatable flavor profile for any number of reasons, or, sometimes cost is elevated on these number of things. If you get to the point of releasing these things, do you envision kind of, being in a marketplace and saying, here, try these side by side? Are you doing some education, or you saying, we're really going to focus on the core and let the nerds sort of find the LEs?
I think a bit of both.
Yeah. I think it's, it's like we part of the reason why our pricing is competitive is because we wanted to lower the barrier to entry. So we wanted to first, even people who already are whiskey drinkers, make it an easy thing to try. For people who are newer to whiskey, an easy thing to try. And then cultivate those consumers and those fans of the brand, and then introduce them to something new. And then yes, also let the whiskey nerds find find us that way too. And we've been able to make some pretty big whiskey nerds fans of Lodestar already with our existing SKU. So we hope they'll be along for the ride.
So I guess for someone who's never tried Lodestar, what's one thing that you want them to know before they ever take their first sip?
That is a great question. Are we talking somebody who is a whiskey nerd or somebody who is completely new to whiskey?
We'll start with new to whiskey, right? Because it's, that's where you're really wanting to live, and if you can think of one for the whiskey nerd, you can tell them something different.
That it's a really approachable and easy to drink spirit, and that you don't have to be a connoisseur to enjoy it, and that our whiskey is for everyone.
And I love to hear that, right? Because this is, I think, the thing that's missing from any whiskey tasting I've ever been to in a liquor store is that I would love to see just a big tub of batch cocktails with the spirit right next to it, right? Because most everybody's not a neat whiskey drinker. They don't want to sip, just straight whiskey. Maybe it's interesting to try it and then taste it in a cocktail, because that's going to be a much broader part of the market. And even as a whiskey nerd, I don't always want to drink straight whiskey either. Sometimes I just want to have a cocktail and I want to see kind of what it does. Go ahead.
That's exactly what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, that was a new concept to a lot of people. A lot of the, our off-premise partners, they were like, oh, this is cool. Like, nobody's doing this. And we're like, great.
Right.
Happy to be here.
Well, I mean, if it were vodka, it would be really, really tough to just, go and do a tasting in a store. You're going to put it in something else because it's kind of its thing. And whiskey is meant to be drank neat, but also in cocktails. And we kind of ignore that whole portion. And you've alluded to this a number of times of sort of accidentally bucking traditions. You just kind of are doing what feels inherently right to kind of market it. But were you, maybe through the course of building this brand, is there any like conventional wisdom that maybe a master blender or master distiller gave you that you just ignored because you knew it wasn't going to be true to your approach?
It's also a good question.
Yeah.
Nothing jumps into my mind that somebody told us where we were like, no. I
think but nobody really told me. Nobody told us that necessarily at the beginning.
It could be just a thing that you knew, right? Like I guess it doesn't have to be a straight piece of advice, but
I think one of the people did initially, and this was before we went into the market, but like is like how many SKUs are you going to start with? And
that is true. A lot of people were like, you're going to need more, and we were like, but we want to be really focused. And not only did we want to create something that's approachable in price for people to be able to try it, but we also wanted to be approachable in price to where this is the whiskey you can have on your bar at home at all times. And you don't feel like, oh my God, I can't really share it with too many people because it's so precious. We just wanted it to be really delicious and easy to share, to consume, to invite people into your home to share with, which goes back to the community part as well.
Yeah.
Hard to build community around something that you have to savor in one drop.
Another thing that people were very surprised about, but then also people who we really valued their opinion were like, this is very smart, is that we were like, we are starting in LA, very local. We are just going to start hyper local and learn before, build the playbook and then expand. So a lot of people were surprised about that, but we feel like it was definitely the right decision.
Yeah, it can be tempting to try to get into a bunch of markets really early on and then not have any product to sell, right? And so you've made a splash with somebody and then you don't have anything to give them because you've got to build another blend and get it bottled up and get it sent to them. And, you kind of lose the mind space that they were able to give you. I'm going to go kind of way, way back to something that you guys said way earlier in this. You say you grew up around, your dad's liked whiskey as well. And I think through the course of my research, I came across that there was some degree of a family connection to whiskey in the past. Did you grow up around some whiskey stories maybe?
I mean, I didn't. My dad was just a whiskey consumer. He loved a good whiskey. He loved a good Scotch as well. And so he was he had a big birthday party every year and served a pretty stiff whiskey sour. And so that was like a legendary thing that I was just like, this is what people love to drink. But the whiskey family connection was with on Wendelin's side.
Yeah, my dad too. He, primarily a Scotch drinker, European, and my dad is German, and he grew up in Germany. And that, I think what you're referring to is my great uncle from or lives in Scotland, and they. For a long time, I'm not sure, I should double check if they still do it. When Bruichladdich started and it was very small, they farmed the barley for that distillery on their farm. So that was cool. And then I believe at one point there was an anniversary edition that was like single estate, like only from the farm from my uncle, and that's pretty cool. And yeah, I've had the opportunity to try it. It's great.
So, and you've mentioned, your family members enjoying Scotch. You have a blend that has American single malt in it. Was there any intention to, have some degree of homage to the fact that you do have kind of some Scotch roots, or was it just saying, hey, this is a really refreshing palate that kind of mixes in with this rye and makes a final thing for you?
I think it was just that I enjoyed drinking Scotch, or we both enjoyed drinking Scotch. We weren't always personally gravitated to less peated Scotch. And also, again, from that kind of accessibility, approachability standpoint, if like very peated Scotches are just not everybody's thing. And so, or something that you maybe develop your palate towards. So we knew that wasn't going to be something that we would have in our whiskey, but yeah, we love Scotch. So definitely in a way, an influence.
Yeah. And, kind of, if you're beginning this journey, as a pandemic pivot, you began thinking about this before American single malt was an actually clearly identified spirit, right? There were a lot of producers that were adhering to the rules because they were a part of the American Single Malt Society, trying to get the rules kind of passed. But from the beginning of the brand to now, you've actually lived through the creation of that regulation of what it's supposed to be. Does that change your business any, or does it actually make it easier because now there are rules?
Well, we were pleasantly surprised and pleased that this happened. And also that just American Single Malt became in the marketplace, a more recognizable product. So when we now explain the blend to people, it's just a lot more people kind of know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was at least unofficially, the America's first American single malt bar soft opened this weekend in Denver.
I didn't know that.
It's getting some notoriety, and I didn't know about. I happened to be in Denver with a bunch of friends, and we didn't know this was happening until I got back. I saw this notification like yesterday. I'm like, man, so close.
Damn!
Yeah, exactly. That's because it was just a bunch of whiskey nerds, and we were all out in Denver visiting other, like Talnua and Stranahan's and a host of other places, and I didn't know that it happened, or we would have absolutely been like, hey, can we get in the door? It would be super cool. And we're pushing up on time just a little bit. And this one may take a little bit of thought, or maybe you've got it right off the top of your head. What is one question that you wish more people would ask about Lodestar that they don't?
You were coming up with the great questions, Tom, really. One question that people
don't ask, but we wish that they...
And it could be that
do I have to drink it neat?
Yeah.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. Yeah. And the answer is no. You drink it the way you like. Right?
Exactly. That's what we
drink it
say.
however
We're
the
all
hell you want to.
flavor. We're all flavor, no fuss.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form. You don't have to know a lot. You can, if you do, great. But if you don't, you can also just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then one last one, and this one's a little bit different as well. You come from the entertainment industry where you worked with talent and for talent, and now you are the talent, right? You are the talent representing your brand. The product is maybe the star, but you're the thing that kind of pushes it along. Has that shift in perspective changed how you approach business relationships or how you take things forward?
It's definitely been a big shift. I would say for both of us personally, I think it was a big shift for me to be more out front rather than behind the scenes. Ultimately, a shift I very much am happy about, not because I want to be out front necessarily, but because it feels more authentic. We are all of it, right? And I think you said it perfectly. The product is actually the star, and we're speaking to that. It all goes back to authenticity and just doing something, putting something out in the world that we feel really proud of, that we 100% can stand behind, and putting something out there that we think brings joy, creates community, invites people in. All of that is super important to us. And so to be able to do that on our own terms with a product that we feel so happy to put out there is really a joyful experience for us as well. As hard as it is, I'm not going to say it's not hard. Building a brand and starting something new is hard, but it's very, very different than what we did before.
Yeah, I will say, I think that having come, from the other side of it, we were able to really figure out what works and what doesn't work. And, and I think also learn that authenticity is always going to be what works best. Because we saw it happen. We saw when things were not authentic and that they didn't work.
Yes.
So I think it helped us develop our sense for that and our eye for that. And also I think we understood like what's realistic and what's not, like what's realistic to achieve and what's not realistic to achieve. So having done all the nitty gritty parts of it. Yeah.
So we are kind of at the end of our opportunity. Thank both of you so much for your time. You can't create more time. And before we close this out, what's the website? Where's the social media? Where do I need to be able to know about the news? Is there a newsletter? Kind of what are the details that we need to know so we make sure we stay in touch and understand what's going on with Lodestar?
Yeah. Well, our website is lodestarwhiskey.com. We do have a newsletter sign up on our website. And if you sign up to our website, you get like shipping's on us on your first order. And you can order our whiskey on our website. We do ship to most states. And then,
and social media is the same, Lodestar Whiskey on Instagram. That's the main platform that we're active on.
And we love to connect with people there too. So
yes.
Definitely reach out to us there.
Follow us, DM us, all the things. We love to hear from people.
Awesome. So like I said, thank you so much. We'll have to touch base again here real soon and kind of see how the brand is developing. Anything changes, any of these LEs that make it to market, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. And we need to get you a bottle.
Yeah, we do.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Embellish Pod. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform you're consuming this on and leave a comment if possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram at EmbellishPod and give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com with all of my links, accounts, contact details, and more. Thanks for stopping by.